In the bustling heart of Chicago, on a packed subway train, a compassionate young black man is heading to a pivotal job interview after years of tirelessly supporting his ailing grandmother. But when a white woman boards, she viciously humiliates him over his race, even splashing her latte on him under the judgmental gazes of fellow passengers. Unbeknownst to her, the CEO of the firm he's interviewing for is on that very train, and the consequences leave her with nothing but regret. Before we dive into this story, drop a comment and let us know where you're watching from. We love hearing your thoughts. The city was just stirring, but Chicago's streets already buzzed with life. The distant wail of ambulances, horns blaring in traffic jams, and the soft chatter of weary commuters at transit stops. Dark clouds loomed over the Loop's skyscrapers, the air sharp with the chill of early spring and a subtle undercurrent of tension. Inside the crowded subway car, the same scene unfolded daily. Passengers stood elbow to elbow, eyes glued to phones, minds adrift. No one smiled. No one made space. In a city like this, you learn to blend in, especially if you were someone like James. James sat near the window, his tall frame slightly slouched to avoid drawing attention. A black man in his late 20s, with skin like polished ebony and a neatly trimmed fade. His eyes carried the weight of countless late nights. His budget charcoal suit fit snugly, pressed meticulously but frayed at the cuffs. His loafers, polished to a shine, bore scuffs from years of wear. In his lap was a worn leather satchel, a keepsake from his grandfather, from a time before life grew harsh. James's grandfather passed when he was 14, a stroke that stole their family's anchor. Since then, it was just him and his grandmother. But life hadn't been gentle. Her diabetes worsened in her 60s, leaving her frail, and James shouldered the burden. Years of gig work, dead-end applications, broken promises, no steady job, no real opportunity until today. Today was different. A real interview at a top firm, a chance to lift himself and his grandmother out of hardship. But hope, James knew, often came with interruptions. The train screeched to a stop at Clark and Lake. The doors slid open, and she stepped on. A white woman, mid-30s, polished and commanding. Her auburn hair was swept into a sleek bun, her cream blazer impeccable, her stilettos tapping the floor like a signal of authority. She scanned the car, her green eyes sharpening as they landed on James. It wasn't mere irritation on her face. It was a deep-seated certainty, the kind rooted in prejudice. She didn't hold back, her voice cutting through the car loud enough for all to hear. Unbelievable! A black guy lounging while a white woman stands. Whatever happened to common courtesy? The subway went quiet. Even the rattle of the tracks seemed to fade under her words. Heads turned, eyes pinned on James. The familiar stares, some hostile, some smug, some blank, carried the same old message. You don't belong. Stay in your lane. Two older men near the front shared a knowing glance. A woman in her 40s behind him tutted softly, muttering to herself. Even those who averted their eyes couldn't mask the shift in the air. That old, ugly prejudice surfaced like a fresh wound. James's gut churned, his hands tightening around his satchel, the only thing he owned of value besides his dignity. He didn't want conflict. He never did. But conflict didn't care what he wanted. The train conductor, a grizzled white man with a stern face, glanced at the scene through the cabin window. His eyes met James's for a fleeting moment, cold, uninvolved, then flicked away. No words, no support, just the usual indifference. Not my issue. James exhaled slowly. His grandfather's voice rang in his mind. They'll challenge your worth every day, but never let them take it. That voice steadied him now, like a pulse. He stood, the weight of the car's stairs like knives in his back. He thought the worst was done. He was mistaken. The real shame was yet to come. James barely adjusted his jacket when it happened. As he moved into the narrow aisle, head lowered, shoulders tight, the woman trailed close behind, her pricey perfume sharp with arrogance. The train lurched, wheels screeching on the tracks, and for a moment, James dared to hope it was over. He'd given up his seat, avoided a scene. Maybe he could reach that interview with his pride, if not whole, at least salvageable. But people like her didn't let things end quietly. The pop of a coffee lid snapping off sliced through the car's low hum. With a deliberate flick, the woman tipped her latte, and a stream of frothy liquid arced through the air. It splattered across James's chest, soaking his white shirt, dripping down his charcoal suit in a mocking stain. The sharp scent of espresso hit him as hard as the liquid's warmth. But worse, far worse, was what followed. She didn't whisper. Her voice rang out, cold and clear for all to hear. She sneered, her green eyes raking over him with smug satisfaction. Looks right on you. Blends with your shade perfectly. The words hit harder than the coffee. Time stretched. The train's rumble filled the silence. But in that packed car, a heavy, suffocating quiet took hold. Every head turned. Dozens of eyes locked on James. Judgment, scorn. Some masked it better, but it was there. Heavy, ancient. A man in a worn Cubs cap near the front chuckled. A middle-aged woman clicked her tongue, aiming her disapproval at James, as if the stain was his fault. Two younger guys traded smirks, muttering to each other. Their amusement stung worse than any insult. James stood frozen, jaw clenched, heart pounding like a drum. The coffee's heat seeped through his shirt, but it couldn't touch the cold ache under his skin. He'd been here before. Not this exact moment. Not so blatant. But the feeling was the same. The reminder that no matter how crisp his suit, how hard he worked, to some, he'd always be reduced to his skin. The woman brushed past, claiming the seat he'd left. She crossed her legs, pulled out her phone, and scrolled with smug ease. Her cruel act complete. James's fingers gripped the satchel's worn handle, his grandfather's last gift. His grandfather's words echoed, "Don't sink to their level, son. Pride stays quiet. Dignity doesn't shout." The conductor's eyes flicked to the cabin window, meeting James's briefly, emotionless, then sliding away. The same old story. See nothing. Say nothing. Keep moving. The train's hum grew louder, pressing on James like a slow choke. He turned to the city outside the smudged windows, wet pavement, neon signs, the hazy outlines of downtown towers where futures were forged or lost. His future waited in one of them. But first, he had to survive this moment. Near the front, a young black girl clung to her mother's hand, her wide eyes fixed on James. Confusion and fear clouded her face, and James's chest tightened. That look, sadness, helplessness, wasn't new. He'd worn it years ago, watching his grandmother dismissed at clinics, stores, street corners, back when he thought being polite enough would earn fairness. He'd learned otherwise since. Swallowing the burn in his throat, James squared his shoulders, the wet fabric clinging awkwardly. He moved to the back of the car, head high, each step heavier than the last. The metal pole by the rear door offered a cold anchor, the only steady thing he had. No napkins, no kind words, just stares, silence, and the quiet agreement that this was somehow normal. James clung to the promise that had carried him. Get to that interview. Get that job. Get your grandma out of that crumbling apartment. You've survived worse. You'll survive this. But in the corner of his eye, something shifted. Among the blank faces and cold eyes, one man stood out. Seated near the car's far side, against the window, he was older, maybe late 50s, with deep brown skin, a neatly trimmed gray beard, and eyes calm, sharp, watchful. He wasn't on his phone or looking away. He was watching, not with pity or judgment, but with a quiet knowing, as if he'd lived this moment before and remembered its sting. Their eyes met briefly. The man offered no nod, no smile, just steady awareness. James looked away, uncertain, but a faint spark of resolve flickered in his chest. Recognition, and a whisper of something unresolved waiting ahead. The glass doors of Harper & Stone's headquarters swung shut, muting the city's roar. Inside, everything shone. Sleek granite floors, steel accents, the hum of ambition in every corner. It was a place where careers were built, where polished professionals moved with purpose, where men like James were silently told they didn't fit. But today was different. Despite the coffee stain drying stiffly on his shirt and the bitter taste of shame, James refused to let the morning define him. The receptionist glanced up, her eyes lingering on the stain, but her tone stayed professional. Name: James Carter, junior analyst interview. His voice was calm, steady. She typed, then pointed to a row of modern chairs by a glass wall. Take a seat. They'll call you soon. James nodded, crossing the lobby, ignoring the subtle glances trailing him. The stain, the skin, the quiet judgment. He knew them well. He settled into a chair, adjusting the satchel on his lap. The elevator pinged. A woman in a cream blazer and sharp stilettos stepped out, scanning the room. Her face was composed, unruffled by the commute. James barely noticed her. The building was full of her type, confident, entitled, moving like the world cleared a path. He didn't recognize her. Why would he? The woman on the train had been vicious, her hate barely veiled. This woman was just another face in the crowd. Ms. Claire Morgan, the receptionist called. The woman's stilettos clicked across the granite as she headed to the interview rooms. James gave her no thought. Moments later, a tall man approached. Dark skin, gray-flecked beard, his tailored suit radiating quiet authority, his eyes sharp, locked on James. James Carter? James stood, nerves tightening. Yes, sir. The man extended a hand, his grip firm. David Harper, CEO. The name hit like a jolt. Harper, as in Harper & Stone, the name on every plaque in the building. David's eyes flicked to the stain, then away, his face unreadable. This way. They walked silently down a sleek corridor, glass offices blurring past. James's mind raced. The CEO for a junior analyst interview? It didn't add up until they reached the boardroom. Inside sat a panel of executives, and Claire Morgan. James paused for a split second, pulse spiking. The cream blazer, the auburn bun. It clicked. The train, the latte, the sneer. She showed no recognition, her face smooth, professional. She hadn't expected him here. David opened the door wider, his voice even. Let's begin. The interview followed a standard rhythm. Questions on skills, analytics, industry trends. James kept his responses sharp, focused. Claire spoke next, her voice polished, tossing out jargon, framing herself as essential. But then the tone shifted. David leaned forward, eyes narrowing, not at James, but at her. Ms. Morgan, he said calmly, Harper & Stone values not just results, but character. How do you foster respect in a diverse workplace? Claire faltered, her lips parting, a faint crease forming on her brow. Well, I believe in fairness, naturally. Her words stumbled. David didn't flinch. Even when no one's watching. Silence. The executives exchanged looks. James sat still, heart pounding grating, but his face steady. Claire rallied, but her confidence had cracked. Her answers grew rushed, hollow. The interview ended. The panel thanked them, but David stayed. He stood, his voice firm. I've decided. His eyes met James's, steady, certain. Mr. Carter, "Welcome to Harper and Stone." James's chest tightened, relief and disbelief colliding. Then David turned to Claire, his tone polite but sharp. "Miss Morgan, thank you for your time. Unfortunately, you don't align with our values." Claire's face paled, the rejection swift, public, undeniable. Her mouth opened, words forming but unspoken. David didn't pause. He motioned for James to follow, leading him out. Behind them, the glass walls reflected the truth. No amount of arrogance or cruelty could hide who you were. Not forever. And James, today, belonged. Claire's stilettos clicked furiously down Michigan Avenue, her blazer flapping like a flag of defeat she refused to wave. Her face burned, not from the spring wind, but from the humiliation seared into her. Rejected before a boardroom by a black CEO who seemed to see right through her. She clenched her jaw, pulling her phone from her bag as she flagged a taxi. The driver barely looked as she slid in, barking her address. But Claire wasn't seeing the city's blur. She was back in that boardroom, that train, every moment of the day unraveling. James Carter. The name gnawed at her now. She hadn't recognized him in the lobby. Just another face until it clicked. The latte stain, David's quiet approval, the victory handed to him while she was blindsided. The taxi ride home was a haze of horns and streetlights. Slamming her apartment door, the anger in her chest turned venomous, calculating. Claire sank into her sofa, fingers flying over her phone. Social media was her weapon. If Harper and Stone wanted to humiliate her, they'd pay. And James wouldn't walk away unscathed. She crafted her post with precision, every word laced with curated outrage. "This morning, a man on the subway harassed me, making me feel unsafe as a woman. Now I learn he's employed by Harper and Stone. Is this who they hire? Disgraceful. Vague enough to skirt lies, clear enough to damn. James was a threat, the company complicit, and she the victim." Her thumb paused over the post button, a flicker of doubt, then gone. She hit send. Likes, shares, and comments poured in. Her followers, friends, and strangers eager for drama rallied. Appalling. Corporate bias at its worst. Call them out. A twisted thrill warmed Claire's chest. This was power. She leaned back, watching the numbers climb, her pulse calming. But the triumph was fleeting. Within 20 minutes, her notifications erupted, not with support, but fury. A video, grainy but clear, posted by a teenage girl, maybe 15. The subway car, the latte on James's shirt, Claire's voice slicing through. "Looks right on you, blends with your shade perfectly." It captured everything. The stares, the silence, her smirk, James's shame. The girl's caption was blunt. "I don't want this to be normal." The video spread like wildfire. Comments turned against Claire. Racist and playing victim. The nerve to cry online after that. News outlets, influencers, activists amplified it. Claire's post drowned in angry replies, her profile exposed across platforms. Panic surged. She tried drafting an apology, but it was too late. The truth was out. James Carter's name surfaced in the storm. His profile, quiet, unassuming, gained traction. People shared his story, his qualifications, his struggles, his dignity in that stained suit. Claire slammed her phone down, chest heaving. This wasn't her plan. She was supposed to win. But she'd misjudged the truth's power and the strength of those who wouldn't stay silent. Morning light streamed through Harper and Stone's lobby, glinting off granite floors. James stood by the doors, adjusting his suit. Same charcoal, now clean, the stain gone. But the morning's mark lingered, not as shame, but as resolve. Employees passed, some nodding, their glances softer, less wary, more curious. Some held recognition. The video had spread citywide. James's phone buzzed with messages. Old friends, strangers, reporters. He ignored them. The video said enough. Still, stepping into the building where everything shifted, James stayed cautious. Chicago didn't hand out happy endings, especially to men like him. The elevator to the 12th floor hummed softly. His reflection in the door stared back. Steady eyes, broad shoulders. He was here to work, to prove he belonged, not with anger, but action. David Harper waited at the reception desk, posture easy, eyes sharp. "Morning," he said simply. "Morning," James replied, voice even. They walked down the corridor, past glass offices, the hum of work around them. Something had shifted, a quiet acknowledgement. "Your grandmother doing okay?" David asked, his tone warm. James nodded. "Yeah, she's proud." His voice caught, recalling her tearful smile when he shared the news, how the world, for once, saw him. David gave a knowing nod. She should be. Near the break room, employees chatted over coffee, their voices dipping as they noticed James. Some nodded, others glanced curiously, but there was no hostility, just cautious respect. At his desk, a young woman paused, her short blonde hair framing a kind face. "You're James, right?" she asked quietly. "Yeah," he said, guarded. She smiled. "That video, thank you for how you handled it. Some of us see who stands strong when it matters." James nodded, her words lingering as she walked away. The day passed with emails, data, reports. Normalcy settled, but the world outside hummed. By noon, news outlets reported updates. Social media buzzed with reflection, not just outrage. The girl who posted the video gave shy interviews. "I don't want silence to feel normal." Her words outran any scandal. Claire Morgan's post had crumbled. Her account vanished, her name tarnished, but James didn't revel. The truth had done the work. Late that day, David stopped by his desk. "You handled it well," he said, eyes steady. "Could have lashed out. You didn't. You let the world see the truth." James nodded, voice quiet but firm. "I fought enough. Sometimes standing still is enough." David studied him, then offered a hand. "Glad you're here, James." The handshake was solid, genuine. As David left, James glanced around the office. The hum of work, subtle nods from colleagues. It wasn't a parade, but it was respect, earned. As the sun sank, casting a golden glow over the floor, James packed up and stepped into the Chicago evening. The world still held shadows. There'd always be people like Claire, silent battles, tests of dignity. But he knew now that change didn't always need speeches or protests. Sometimes it was a moment on a subway, a teen's courage with a phone, a CEO's quiet gaze, and the stubborn choice to stand tall. Slowly, painfully, the world shifted. Join us to share powerful stories. Hit like and subscribe. Turn on the notification bell for daily lessons and heartfelt stories.